Hello and welcome to Edison TV. Today I'm speaking to Richard Jefferey, Executive Chairman at ActiveOps, an AIM-listed workforce optimization company. The company provides AI-powered SaaS solutions for decision intelligence, focusing on sectors such as banking, business process outsourcing and insurance. Richard, many thanks for joining me today.
Very welcome. Glad to be here.
Good. And can you start by telling us a little bit about your background with ActiveOps and the history behind the business?
Certainly. ActiveOps, we floated on the stock exchange on AIM in 2021, but the story goes back further than that. Myself and my co-founder started the business it goes back to 1995 before we created the entity that's become ActiveOps today in 2005. So it's been quite a long journey, but we've created a software platform today, which I think is really starting to give the sort of the platform of data that's underpinning so many people's AI journey. So it's an interesting time for ActiveOps right now.
Great. And can you explain in a little bit more detail what you do? Obviously, workforce optimization is a big field. Decision intelligence is a pretty big field. Yeah. What precisely does the product solution?
We sit at the intersection of, if you think about the systems of processing in large operations, you'd hear words like Appian and Salesforce and the transaction engines, but you've also got those human capital management software platforms that keep people, Workday, PeopleSoft, those kind of things. But of course, those two universes intersect in where work gets done. And ActiveOps' software synthesizes, if you like, the work that people are doing and the time they're spending, so that in probably a unique way for many enterprises, we're actually providing measures of outcome, of value. And that is incredibly powerful, because so much today is about, please demonstrate the value that your activity, your process, your team, your software is actually creating, rather than talking about inputs. Now, the big problem for large enterprises in that space is their very complexity makes that really hard. So although the problem of, if you like, measuring perhaps time, work even, in a team is in itself not so difficult, when you talk about some of our large customers with literally tens to 15,000s of people in their administrative activities, you imagine how complicated that is to actually draw all that together into something that is not so much relevant to the local team, but relevant to the large enterprise. And ActiveOps software provides that instrumentation over not just what has been done, but more importantly, and this is the critical bit, what can be done.
Interesting. And can you give some, examples of how customers are deploying your software, and also discuss, the payback period on deploying the solution?
Yeah. In a typical organization, as much as 25% of the useful time of people you're already paying for is lost, not because people aren't working hard, but because effectively it wasn't the best use of their time. Not because, again, even in your team, you may do the things you know you needed, but over there was a team that could have used your time better. Again, extend that upwards. So what our software does, and the payback is typically is less than 6 months, is provide visibility, so that we now know much more about what we have, more importantly, what we could do tomorrow. But we also know that for all the other organizational teams around us. And therefore, you as a leader of those business units make more preemptive decisions, better decisions about where Richard's going to work over next Thursday, next Friday. And scaling that to tens of thousands of people means the capacity release is, as I said, typically anywhere between 10 to 25% of time that you're already paying for with the systems you're already using before process improvement. That's the sort of direct payback. But of course, then there's the second order benefit, which speaks to the current challenges of people are trying to make investment cases for new processes, investment in workflow tools, or indeed AI. Which process do we go for? How confident can I be? Because our track record of benefit realization may not be totally great. And our data and our process gives so much more assurance to that. So a use case for us is customers who, looking maybe for a more confidence in their transformation investment, deploy ActiveOps to manage the workflow today, give them a quick yield, but much more importantly, give them the yield for the other big programs coming down the tracks, because they're in control.
And can you talk about your product roadmap? I think one of the interesting things about ActiveOps is you have quite a clear AI strategy and value proposition. So talk about your roadmap, but also how you are building in AI to the proposition.
Well, if I just take a couple of example challenges that for enterprises is a huge cost burden. Integrations. You have all these complex systems you pay big tickets for, but integrations between them, between Blue Prism and your workflow tool or your old green screen technologies, those are incredibly important if you're going to really yield the aggregate value of those systems. But the interfaces, the connectivity is so brittle. A small change to any one of those things and it falls apart. So in ActiveOps, what ActiveOps can do with our desktop analytics is it's actually seeing what's actually happening, if you like, at the desktop layer, and that's making our connectivity adaptive. Something's changed in the way that process has happened because of who knows what happened, but the integration doesn't need to evolve. Effectively, it will evolve with the system. There's a very biological analogy with what ActiveOps does, because your central nervous system needs to keep up with the pace of your evolving capabilities as a human system. So it is with our enterprise customers. They can't rely on reinvesting technologies to connect things that they're paying for. They have to have systems of control which adapt with those new processes. So our AI strategy is taking that data feed, which we've already had with our desktop analytics, and adding that to the world of AI so that it can now learn from those analytics to know that something's changed, to then feed it into the control system. So you didn't need to know, you just told that something's, you can see the outcome results. And that kind of roadmap for our technology partners, our technology customers inside enterprises is phenomenal, because it reduces the risk and the long-going cost of maintenance of those big systems they're paying for.
So at your recent Capital Markets Day, you outlined your growth plans, growing revenues from just over 40 million to 100 million, and EBITDA margins from about 8% currently to, I think, 25%. Can you discuss that and how you're going to get there?
Yeah. I mean, within the constraints of the public markets and forecasting that, we felt it was important to lay out just how big we see as the opportunity. Hence, we did the Capital Markets Day. And that's not really something we've done before. We've tended to say, as we came to market, look at our track record, look at our estate, look at our blue chip customers, look at our renewal rates and so on. That's a sound investment. I think we're going a stage beyond that, because we're so excited potentially not just about the market opportunity, but the base where we're at, the progress, the velocity, if you will. So our net revenue retention rate last half was 117%. So every dollar we got last year, we got £1, $1.17 this in the last year. So that speaks to the extension of our current product set to our existing customer base. But we know we've only tapped, and this is before you've sold a single new customer, about 8 to 10% of the addressable community for our software products in our existing customer base. So if you compound that sort of rate of renewal, and there's new stuff, our velocity of new product, and therefore the appeal and the utility of our software to our customers is growing at a rate we've never done before. That sort of sustain 120% NRR, and you've got a very, very powerful growth engine. And that's before you add new customers. But alongside that, our new customer rate went up by 300% last year. So we got 3 times more customers last year than we did the year before that. Now, that's a number that you can easily scale. And for example, the absolute number was 12 last year, but equally, it just tells you how much more in the global markets we can go. So you start dropping in 10, 20, 30 new customers a year with our land and expand NRR of 120, and you do the maths, you get to some very exciting numbers. And that's our existing capability. So that's underpinning, if you like, the underlying strength of the business today. But then what's also interesting is, because that need for data and control is becoming a much more obvious problem, we're seeing a lot greater interest from, if you like, partners, the ecosystems around Appian and Pega and the like, where those service providers, not necessarily the platform themselves, but the service providers who need things to add greater value to those platforms, are coming towards us and saying that's a really interesting addition to, if you like, their suite. So we see the next phase, and this is what I was outlining in the Capital Markets Day, that growth in intermediaries, where we can develop and configure solutions configured around those ecosystems to give ourselves new reach. So that's new markets in territories, but it's also sectors as well. So we can see a whole growth area there. And then the third part of the road to 100 million is also inorganic. We've done 4 over our lifetime, each year which has brought a very specific capability. The last one, most recently, was probably the only meaningful competitor in our particular space in the world that was quite tuned to us. So it's a really useful addition to our IP, but more importantly, our customer base. And we picked up some really great blue chip customers, all of whom they're also in about 5% of the addressable. So add to that, I mean, only I think is it 1% of software companies get to 100 million ARR. So for us, it's an important target. It's a stretchable target, stretching target. But from the team and the ActiveOps community, we feel it's a kind of logical progression rather than a sort of a moonshot in terms of its risk and accessibility.
From my perspective, it's really good to see an AIM-listed business was really, demonstrating very good growth, but with ambitious growth ambitions. And to the extent slightly unusual, we want more growth companies on the UK market. How are you finding life as a listed entity, and why did you choose that path?
I'm a huge enthusiast for the right circumstance, right fit, right? And not for everybody, but for us, as an alternative to, and I speak as a founder here, where a meaningful amount of the equity of the business is now going out to third parties. The value to me of being on the listed market is fantastic. I mean, I've got a great supportive board, but I'm still a significant shareholder. And as such, for me and my management team, our capacity to execute our strategy is fantastic. So then to that extent, the platform that the AIM market facilitated, the backstory was we had a very small EIS investment, which I'm again a huge fan of, back in 2014. So I wanted to give those investors who backed us at that stage a really good exit. So they got, I think, a 5.5 times return from their investment in ActiveOps at that early stage. But without compromising, with perhaps one big shareholder as a private equity alternative, we might have gone. So I'm a huge fan. The other observation I make is it is a different universe, which personally I'm finding fascinating. But it is a new world for me and for my team. So having the right advisory groups around us, whether it's from the right nomad and broker, but also through to the right advisory team, because it's a whole different area of marketing, and this is your world more than mine. But you had no real idea as a punter about the world of the city, the segmentation of the different audiences who might buy your shares. So very personally and entirely selfishly, I'm finding it a fascinating journey. And for any potential CEO, shouldn't underestimate as a life experience or as a founder what that does bring. Because let's be honest, as long as I do what we say and deliver on our promises, which ActiveOps has done so far, the world of the public market is a very, very exciting place to be.
Well, it's certainly been a good journey so far, and it looks as if there's plenty more to come. Richard, many thanks for joining me today.
Pleasure.